The Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 1059 The Zone, is brought to you by Tito's Handmade Vodka. Well, Tito's Handmade Vodka this afternoon sounds good, doesn't it? As we get ready for Thanksgiving week. Some big games, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, college and NFL. Looking forward to that. Well, there's a lot going on in Baton Rouge. They're looking for a football coach, and that group is ready to go to Atlanta. And they're ready to go to the college football playoff because they have the talent and the resources. So we welcome in Mike Detillier, LSU insider, WWL New Orleans. And Mike joins us on the New Belgium Fat Tire Hotline. Mike, what do you think the timeline is for Joe Alleva and the chancellor as far as when they would like to name LSU's next coach? Huh? All right, Mike, when do you think the timeline is? Mike Detillier joining us on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 1059 The Zone. I don't think we had him punched up. Mike, LSU's looking to hire a new coach. What do you think the timeline is as far as when Joe Alleva and the chancellor would like to name the next LSU coach?
I think by this time next week, he will already be in place.
Okay, in your opinion, is Jimbo Fisher still one of the top candidates?
Oh, he is the top candidate.
Okay.
And I felt that for the last couple of weeks that he's the guy that Joe Alleva has always wanted. Joe chased after him a year ago, could not seal the deal, and he's back after him again. He's the guy that he wants for one big reason. He's the quarterback whisperer. When you look at this LSU team, what has been the quicksand position for them? It's been quarterback. And when you look back at Jimbo's track record at Florida State, Christian Ponder, E.J. Manuel, Jameis Winston, look at LSU when he had Jamarcus Russell and Matt Mock, Matt Flynn, Rohan Davey, Josh Booty. You've got a pretty long list of guys there that he's mentored at that critical spot. Name me one other than Zach Mettenberger at LSU.
I can't.
Yeah, so you can see that that's been the spot, and I think it's pretty certain that I think this deal will be done. But by the end of this week, I think it's a done deal. And if something happens to screw this up, boy, Joe Alleva has walked into it again because, he's chased after him, almost like a gal that, maybe is a little bit above you that you're trying to go out with. And last year she said, no, I'm not going out with you. And then this year you're back after it again. But this time I think he says, I do.
Okay, Mike Detillier, LSU insider on the New Belgium Fat Tire Hotline. You're listening to Out of Bounds, ESPN 1059 The Zone. LSU is looking to hire a new coach, and they're ready to go to Atlanta in the college football playoff. So, Mike, Jimbo Fisher has all the leverage here. What do you think the numbers will look like? And what could get in the way, if anything? Or is this thing going – this thing's going to go. They'll offer him – whatever he needs, $6-7 million. Give us an idea where you think they are.
Yeah, I think it's going to be in that category. The big thing with Jimbo is going to be, and from everything I've heard, is there has been a little bit of friction about the amount of money that he's had to spend on assistant coaches, and that's not going to be an issue at LSU. They have the highest paid staff in college football, so. They've shown that they spend the money on assistant coaches. Also, in this day and age of facilities, it is part of the game of recruiting, and a major part of it. And at this point, LSU's a cut above Florida State. So I think with the amount of money that you can give assistant coaches, the facilities you have. And the big thing, Bo, and this is kind of a repeat, I've told you this before, but, in Florida, there's a lot of folks there, and there's a lot of kids. But you're also in a pretty big battle for every one of them because of, University of Florida, Miami of Florida, Alabama. You look at Texas, you can kind of say the same thing for any top kid there. It's probably 5 or 6 schools really, jostling around. Same thing as California. Look at Louisiana, per capita. 7 out of the last 10 years, they have been number one in putting out athletes to the NFL. Who's your major competition? There is no in-state school that's beating you out. Now, Nick Saban will come in here, and because almost like a good fisherman that knows where to fish, he knows where to throw the line. Every once in a while, he'll pull a player or two out per year. But look at your competition in comparison to what Jimbo's got to go through in Florida. It is none.
Right.
In essence, you're trying to beat out
big
Saban,
dog,
so to speak. But look the difference. You've got a levee built that Nick first built. Nick's the one who built it, and Miles did a very good job. No matter what his critics might say, he did a very good job of putting even more dirt on that levee to keep the majority of top Louisiana kids in the state of Louisiana. And I think that is a huge play for Jimbo Fisher. Nick told me that himself. That was the main reason, or one of the main reasons, I should say, that he left Michigan State to come to LSU. When he was at Michigan State, he wasn't the biggest dog in the yard. He was at LSU.
Mike Detillier, LSU insider, talking LSU football and who they will hire here over the next week. So, Mike, let's say something happens for whatever reason, and Jimbo Fisher decides to stay at Florida State, and it looks like that Herman is he's the lead guy, the lead dog for Texas. Where would LSU go from there if for some reason they can't get the deal done with Jimbo Fisher?
Well, you might be looking at an athletic director and a head coach at that point in time. There's been a lot of names floated around. Larry Fedora has been one of them because of his track record, too, certainly on the offensive side of football. And he's been a coach that's always got a hot foot. I mean, he never stays too long in one spot. He reminds me of my mother-in-law. She's like that, too. Anywhere she goes, within 10 minutes, she's ready to leave. And basically, Fedora's the exact same way. I mean, he's not there long. He's ready to go. And that would throw things into a major tailspin of what happens if Jimbo says no and Herman is sucked up by University of Texas. All I'm telling you, Bo, is the people here at LSU, the unemployment line would be increased because I think you would be looking for both an athletic director and a head coach.
Wow. Mike Detillier talking LSU football. Who will they hire? Jimbo Fisher's the number one guy. Can they get it done? And then from there, if for some reason Jimbo Fisher said no, who would it be? Would it be Brett Bielema, Gary Patterson, Mark D'Antonio, Mike Gundy? There's some really, really good coaches out there that have won at places that are difficult to win, like TCU. Hey, Mike.
One of the things, I think this is the key, I really believe that in Oliva's mind, at this point in time, he's got Jimbo in the pocket, that he's already landed him. I think what he is trying to do now is secure the borders and basically trying to have a formula in place that he can keep both Dave Aranda and Ed Ogeron at LSU. I think that is the big key down the stretch for him. His feelings at this point in time is that I think he's landed Jimbo. I think now the thing is I want to keep the defensive coordinator that it's unprecedented, so to speak, in college football. In 10 games, that defense has given up 11 touchdowns. I mean, this is major college football you're talking about, and your defense has only given up 11 touchdowns in 10 games. The other thing, too, and with Coach O, Louisiana guy, great recruiter. He has mentored and recruited 10 first-round pick defensive linemen. He knows the area. He talks the language. That I think, is the big thing right now for Joe Oliva.
Okay, so Mike, what do you think it's? Give me a percentage on being able to get all that done. I mean, that's the trifecta. As far as Oliva getting landing Jimbo and then keeping Dave Aranda, Ed Ogeron.
I think it's 50-50 that you could do it. Now, here's the thing. I'm not sure how many teams will come after Aranda as a head coach with that resume and what he's done this year. I would assume that they will have a couple teams in college football that will ring his doorbell and at least want to interview him. Can they keep him is going to be the big part, because if he gets a head coaching job, then he's gone. And I think the same way with Coach O. I think if he were offered a head coaching job, he would leave. I look at Ogeron this way, having known him for over 40 years. He's got a house in Mandeville. Wife lives there. She loves it there. His two kids, the twins, are both playing football at McNeese. The oldest son's at LSU. He's got a lot of family there. And so unless he would get a head coaching job,
can he swallow his ego, Mike? Can he, look, all of them have egos, and that's why they're able to climb to the place that they have as far as their profession. And so we know Eddie O is talented and has some serious strengths in some areas in football. Do you believe that he's willing to, make $700,000 to $1 million as the recruiting coordinator and D-line coach because his family, they're all right there in Louisiana?
When you're a married man, sometimes you take orders from your wife.
True.
And it may well be that situation comes about. I do know he didn't handle it well, and he will admit it. He didn't handle it well when it happened at USC to him. Mm-hmm. He broke out of there when he thought he had the job. I think it was obvious once the Florida game ended that he knew that he was not going to be the head coach at LSU. When he walked off that field, there was no doubt that any chance of any possibility was gone. What I don't know is, does he get like Aranda? Is he going to have some teams that take a look at that, especially if they'd end up beating Texas A&M, and he ends up, with that record, and he's lost to the two teams that are playing in the Southeast Conference Championship game, that somebody might not ring his bell like Aranda. Now, both of them have a disadvantage, and I told this to Ed, and I told this to Dave. You defensive-minded coaches.
No doubt.
In this day and age, they want the offensive guy. He's the pretty girl on the street. He's the pretty gal.
Great point,
and
Mike.
So
Kirby Smart, and Mike, Kirby Smart was the exception, not the rule right now in college football.
Yep, and you look at it across the board, most of those guys come from on the offensive side of football. And Ed and I has had this conversation now probably for 5, 6, 7 years, that is a major trend. And you've got to be a super successful defensive coordinator, defensive coach to get a head coaching job. Now, Kirby did, and the resume was there for him.
Right.
When I look at it, I think there's a better chance that, Ed would get one quicker than Dave, because Ed has a record of the last, he's been a head coach 3 times, and he's had success 2 of the 3. Now, he failed miserably at Ole Miss, but, when you look at his success of what he had at SC, and if he ends up beating A&M, another successful run at LSU, some team may take a look at that and say, you know what, that guy has done a pretty doggone good job, and he's been a head coach, and he's learned from his mistakes. Here's the problem with Aranda. Never been a head coach anywhere. Does he become a little bit like Coach O, and you have to go through a learning process with him?
That's okay. That's a good point. Mike Detillier, LSU NFL Insider on the New Belgium Fat Tire Hotline. You can follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Detillier. He's a great follow. Has been great for us on the show the last 6, 7, 8 years. And we're talking LSU football and what could play out here. I tell you what, Mike, depending on what happens with Satterfield at Appalachia State, he's a heck of a coach. He may get a better gig. So that could come open. That could be something Aranda could scratch around. PJ Fleck, Western Michigan, he may get a job. Aranda may scratch around there. Of course, Houston's going to open up. Mike, what's intriguing about Houston is even though you're G5, you're like the top G5 team in the country or one of them. So everybody can tell after Bryles and Sumlin and now Herman going through there that that's the springboard to get to the Power 5. That could be highly, highly coveted, Mike, that position at Houston.
One thing, and my buddy Curtis Johnson, who, CJ was the head coach at Tulane, longtime assistant coach with the Saints as the wide receivers coach, and he was at Miami, at Florida, and also at San Diego State. He always told me this. He said, find me a place that got people, and I'll find you football players.
Bam.
Man, look at Houston. Man, you can't find football players in and around that one area. You talking about you got a lot of people to recruit, and the facilities have gotten better. You look at it over the last 5 years, Houston has pumped some money into the program. And so I agree with you, Bo, that you look at Houston today, it's totally different than what you looked at it 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, 5 years ago is a blink of an eye as far as I'm concerned when you're looking at college football. And so I think that will be a highly coveted spot for any coach because of the fact of what you talked about. It could spring-load you to a number of other better jobs. It's not your final destination. Mm-mm. It's not like Bill Yeoman was years ago, and it's your final spot. That spot can spring-load you to another much bigger spot. And just think about if LSU handily beats Texas A&M, that Texas A&M job may come open too. I'm just telling you, the people in A&M's not real happy if Kevin Sumlin takes a double-digit loss to LSU.
You think LSU – I wonder what the mentality is of that team now after that devastating loss to Florida, Mike, and if they'll show up and get after it Thursday.
Well, I think one of the things, too, may be, and play this one for the coach. Because Coach O has been there for a while, and they, listen, as much as they say I don't read the paper, I don't watch TV, come on, everybody does.
Right.
I've had people in the NFL tell me I don't watch it. Come on, and they can tell you verbatim what you say on the radio and television.
Right.
And so, come on, I don't believe any of that. I do believe that it's going to be an interesting mental game because of it. It's played on Thanksgiving, and the mentality for both teams and how they will treat that. LSU last year came out, with a W in a very emotional game for Les Miles. I would not be surprised you see a scenario where that somewhat happens again. And win this one for Coach Orgeron, knowing that it's going to be the last game, he's going to be the head coach at LSU.
All right. Fair enough. So it's Jimbo Fisher is the leader in the clubhouse. And
I think he's 1, 2, and 3.
I love it. And we'll see if Oliva can also – and some of it may – in fairness to Joe Oliva, and I know he hasn't done a good job on some things, some of this may be out of his hands because you can't blame Dave Aranda if he wants to go – interview for a G5 job if it does open up. So that won't be Oliva's fault. But he would like to keep Aranda because, as Mike said, he's an excellent defensive coordinator. I can't wait to see what I can't wait to see what happens with LSU and A&M game. And then I can't wait to see what happens Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday as far as who LSU hires and who they retain. It's going to be wild. Because then, Mike, and I'm running out of time, but if Jimbo moves, then that opens up Florida State.
Oh,
and we're looking at a domino effect because, as you know, Mike, Florida State's a great job.
Yeah, it's a really good job also. But the other thing, too, is how it affects your teams. How is Florida State team taking this in? Because, again, we talk about, in this age of how quickly information can pass around, they're going to play a Florida team that is playing with a lot of confidence after beating LSU on the road. And now, all of a sudden, you're facing them again in a rivalry that has stepped it up pretty good over the last few years. And the one thing with McElwain, he has shown he knows how to throw gas on the flame. So it's going to be interesting how Florida State plays this out. Because what can Jimbo tell them to relieve them of that sort of, are you leaving too? We saw one thing, and it happened during the season. I think that Houston team turned on Tom Herman for a little while because I think they had heard it and read it so much about he was leaving, and it took him a little while to get some footing. Does that happen to Florida State
this weekend?
Knowing that their coach, he's more than likely out of there Saturday at midnight.
Oh, wow. That's a good point. Okay. Oh, man, it's going to be a wild. But between the rivalry week and then the coaching carousel, who knows what's going to happen. That was Mike Detillier. Follow him on Twitter at Mike Detillier. Mike, we wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving, and we look forward to catching back up next week.
Thanks a lot, Bo. I appreciate it. Same to everybody listening.
All right. Thanks, bud. Mike Detillier on the New Belgium Fat Tire Hotline. Super insight. I'm totally off the clock, so we'll take a break. You're listening Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Coming up next, we'll tell you how you could enter to win 2 SEC championship game tickets.